Welcome, everybody, to What Makes It Tick. And today we have a special guest, Joe DeMax from Central Control is joining us. And we're going to talk a little bit about a favorite subject of mine, which is controlling multiple things using his software, Central Control. And he's going to show us the new things that are coming into course. So I want to welcome everybody that's live here on camera right now. Thank you, Greg, for coming in as usual. Welcome, Will, from over all the way from Houston, and Guy all the way from Seattle. JJ all the way from the West Coast somewhere, I think, with indisposed place, and Andy from San Francisco. And welcome back, Eric. Good to have you here. So, Joe, tell us, what is the basics behind Core?
Thank you, Jeff. Good to see some familiar faces. And I also just wanted to reassure the viewing audience that I've upgraded from LTE to a cable connection, the dizzying heights of cable internet. But yeah, anyway, Core. So about a year ago, I started to, after being nagged for a long time, started to wonder if it would be at all possible to port our Windows-only central control software to other platforms. And it turned out, with a significant amount of effort, it indeed was. And that is what I'd like to talk about today.
All right, Joe. So let's go really deep into this with, let's roll the VT, Joe.
Roll VT.
Need audio.
Joe,
Yeah.
when are you going to release that Mac version?
It was that quick. I pulled the PowerBook G4 out of the box and it was done.
I can't believe that you actually considered that was the fastest way you could do it. I mean, that's unbelievable. I can't believe you knocked it out that fast.
I was told from my Mac friends that it was the preferred system for Macintosh development was a PowerBook G4. That's just what I've been told.
So there are people out there that use Macintoshes. Okay, I know a few. Do you feel like that it was a big enough demand to put the time in now?
It was, yes, there was a big enough demand. I don't have to respond to YouTube comments nearly every day now on 4-year-old tutorial saying, where's my Mac version? That's a relief. And I will say it's beyond Mac as well. Like, the whole reason of putting this much effort in was to run anywhere. And I think we'll probably talk about that a bit later, but I think it was worth the effort. And, you know, it's good. Maybe at some point I thought someone else will come along and build something like this for Mac, but 4 years on they didn't. So I thought I may as well be the one to do it.
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like that there are controls out there for a few people that are using Macs and other things, even Raspberry Pis and other things too. But those focuses aren't necessarily the bits that I use all the time. I really prefer your software over any. I like the GUI, the simple way of assigning things and making things work a little bit easier. And it's great to have somebody I can call if I need help, which has happened a couple times. So let's dive into the demo portion of this and show us a little bit about what's new then. And yeah.
Let me know when you can see it.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Cool.
It looks like it's on a Mac on a PC, which is like probably the most favorite way I've ever ran that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I thought switching the KVM back and forth might get a little bit old. But anyway, this is Central Control Core. And as you can see, the user interface is remarkably simple and in fact really doesn't allow you to do anything. And that's because for this one, we've switched to using a web user interface. And if I click this Open GUI button here, it will load up Chrome and I can see my interface, which is very reminiscent of the Windows version. In fact, I've got it running here. Like, it's more or less the same layout, and it should be understandable to anyone who has used the Windows version, and indeed understandable to anyone that hasn't. And there's a few reasons why having a web-based interface was important, and that's because, number one, you don't have to do all your configuration on the machine it's running on. And that's, you know, if it's across the other side of some massive venue, I think that's, you know, you can't really understate how important that is. And the other reason is because maybe sometime in the very near future, we may be running on devices that maybe don't have a screen. And you're going to need some way to do all your configuration. So web-based user interface, access it from anywhere on your local network and do your setup. I've already got something of a project built out here, which is mainly to assist me with the production today. So I've got on my desk here, I've got an X-Keys T-bar and a Stream Deck over here. And the X-Keys, I actually just use it to switch from the Blackmagic to the PTZ camera, which you're watching now. So over here, I've got some buttons to just switch between my two cameras. This button here was when Jeff told me to roll the VC. I pressed that, just press play the video, and that is controlling OBS. I'm just using it as a simple mixer to send out the virtual webcam and switch between a couple of cameras. On these buttons here, I've got as you can see, an Elgato key light in my project. So if I so choose, I can plunge myself into darkness. We'll turn that back on. And then over here, I've actually got control of this PTZ camera, so I can adjust my shot. Or alternatively, I can switch between some of my presets, which brings me quite nicely to this 8M I've got set over here, because I think a great thing to show would be just how quick it is to set yourself up with this software and say, go from having no buttons programmed to having pretty much everything we need to run a production as quickly as possible. Because I know a lot of people, when they think about this type of software, they're like, well, you know, it's going to take me a long time to get this all set up and mapped, and then maybe I have to do the feedback as well, and that's going to take me even longer. So what I'd really like to do now is kind of dispel that and show how quickly we can go from nothing on this surface, apart from the stuff I've just showed you, to pretty much having control of the switcher. So I'm going to click Add Device. And again, this menu should look really, really familiar to anyone who has used Central Control past or present. I will go into the Video Mixers tab. I'm going to pick 8M. It is a slightly different module in Core than it is in Studio, because we had to remove some of the Windows-based stuff we were using to do this, but it's ever growing. The list of commands is always growing, always adding new functionality to this module. And I will say, if anyone is using this module in Core and there's something they desperately need, don't hesitate to send an email and we'll be glad to look at getting that implemented for you. So I'm going to click OK. It's going to ask me to set a name, and I'm going to call this Jeff's 8M, because it is actually his unit and he's very fond of these devices.
Yeah,
so
it's one of my favorite. It is one of my favorite. Yes,
that's why I've got it here. So I know the IP address to be this, or at least I think I do. I hope I'm right. It was right. So now we've added that to our project. We've set an IP address over here in the right, the parameters section for that module. And this is contextual, so it changes based on what I have selected. So we've done that. Now what I'd like to do is look at getting those assigned to this X-Keys 124 T-bar. So I'm going to, if I press a button on here, you'll see conveniently the controls button is blinking, kind of draws my attention to it. That's what I want to map. So I'm going to click that. Jeff, does this look familiar to you? Faithful reproduction?
It looks like it, yeah.
It's almost completely the same, except now we actually have the button feedback settings.
Oh, I do like that. Yes.
Right in here. So if I select a different button, you'll see actually if I press this one, which was the on switch for my key light, that is actually set to blue. And if you've got an X-Keys RGB or a MIDI controller that has RGB or a Stream Deck, this is different. And you see more options, more colors, set a background image, you know, so on and so forth. So anyway, we've done that. And now let's actually assign this controller. So I've turned on this toggle here, which again, familiar to anyone that's used the program. Jump to control so I can simply press a button. We've selected that Matrix 8-1, 8 row, first button, sure. And then I'm going to select the Jeff's 8M as the device I'd like to map.
Make sure you get the right one.
Of course. And you can see we've got some commands here. And like I said, we're adding more all the time to this module. And the first one will be set preview. And I just want the first 8 inputs. That's, after 8 inputs on the switcher, that's kind of all we've got. So what I'm going to do is to do this as quickly as possible. I'm going to select them all. We'll right click, assign commands. And there you go. You will see it has handily incremented the input number every time we went along. So I don't have to manually go into each one and change it. Let's do the program row now. I've pressed that button that I wish to use as program, the red row. Quite a common thing to do. We'll select all of these. We'll do set program and we'll set it back to input 1. Cool. I'd say all I really want now is the cut. So I'm going to do the same thing again. Select the button, cut, and then we'll do an auto transition. Done. And then if I select this in the top left to fader, I can now take the T-bar and we can set that to adjust the T-bar on the switcher. So let's make this a bit smaller. And now, if I start punching my buttons, you'll see the switcher is changing inputs as you might expect. I can do the program row. I've got my T-bar fully working. And that's pretty much it. The other thing I can do, which we took from Central Control Studio, a very popular feature among ATEM users, is the SuperSource Animator. And for those of you that aren't ATEM users, SuperSource it's like a shall we say, mega DVE. It lets you do pretty complex box shots that you might be able to do with software mixers and easily like have a background for video inputs, borders, that kind of carry on. But the one thing that's been lacking in the ATEM software is a way to manage those presets. So we do have a feature borrowed from Studio, built right into Core, is the SuperSource Animator. So if I just click that button on Jeff's ATEM, brings up this window. I can add presets. So the way that works is it should be very, very familiar to anyone that's used the comp functionality on the TriCaster. We've got a layout already in there. We click add preset. It adds it as a new preset, and then I can go in here on the ATEM software itself. I'm going to move this box, click add preset again, and then it's created a snapshot of that state. And then here you can I can animate between them using different effects. So a bit of a value add you don't get in the ATEM software on its own. So that is pretty much Central Control Core. It does a lot of what the Windows version does, but for the most part, the goal with this is to be the essence of what Central Control is, the core of what it was. All the control integration stuff. We've got a lot of the MIDI control, all of the MIDI controllers here. So if you want to hook up a Behringer control surface to a TriCaster, we can do that. We've got a load of different control surfaces here. All of the NewTek panels, if you want to repurpose them with an ATEM or vMix, we've got all of those modules. We've got modules like MIDI in and out, like generic modules like that, ArtNet input. So if you have some need to convert, say ArtNet to MIDI, so you can do some weird controlling of something that takes in MIDI from a lighting console, you can do that. So that's what it is. It's the essence of Central Control, but we now run across multiple platforms.
Man, I gotta say, the programming part, that's the part that just brings me back to this project, the product more than anything. You just programmed a control surface in like less than 5 minutes. You can't do that with BitFocus. I'm sorry. Not unless you're doing really simple stuff, and that's amazing, and with feedback too. The next step, as you're saying, is like more devices and stuff. Have you really, and without breaking some NDA rules and things like that we've talked about in the past, so cut me off if I'm not supposed to be talking about how I can't wait to use this little box here, which is a single board computer, and shove this into a box with another controller, connect them together, and it calls out automatically to link machines together.
Yeah. So two things. there will be this in collaboration with PI Engineering, who make the X keys, this one here, and a lot of new ones. They've got a new modular rack system, all RGB buttons.
Very nice.
But I happened to notice that in the rack systems, there was room for a single board computer. And around the same time, I was working on this port. So very soon, in collaboration with them, we'll be shipping some X keys units that have central control built in. You don't need a computer. It's all standalone. You just need, well, you need the computer to do with a web browser, so any machine really, to do your initial configuration, and then off you go. If you wish to purchase a small Windows machine on Amazon and put it in a control surface, you're welcome to do so. But the Linux embedded version is going to be licensed exclusively to PI Engineering, because it's not as straightforward as you might think to get this up and running on a single board computer. We did weeks of testing about every single board under the sun to see, you know, the compatibility, how far you could push it. And we've used that to kind of balance out which machine we should use, how to set it up properly, how to make it work reliably. So that will be a product with PI Engineering. But like you said, if you wish to purchase a Windows system and put it in a old TriCaster control panel, you're more than welcome to do so.
I ran out of time today. I was planning on doing that. I ran out of time today.
Yeah.
I have an 860 and it was already missing the bottom of it because we had to replace the USB that we broke off on the inside, which was fun, by the way. But the base was off of it, and I was like, hey, flip that over. Let's see if this fits inside. And it was like, it was this huge cavern. I was just saying, yes, put me inside, put me inside. So next is take the boards out, pop a couple holes in the back, do a little extra dribble mounting and things like that. But that's exactly what I was thinking. It's less GAC. That's the way I look at it. It's just less GAC altogether. One question on the PI stuff, because I do have a lot of X keys sitting around. On their implementation, is it going to be running off of PoE or capable of running off of PoE, or do you know?
I believe shipping units will have PoE capability. Cool. I think that's very important. Don't hold me to that, but I think
I'm finding I just want it more and more and more with our infrastructure that we have around here. Just the stupid little wall warts that you always got to find rack space for, or plug on underneath the desk or whatever. This one did not have that capability. This is hold on, UE2. Came with Windows installed. Who knows what version, other than it's Windows 11, but I don't know what version it is. Straight from China. So with this one, it ran really fast. It's got basically a Celeron chip in it, and it was pretty impressive of just running it here on the desk, playing around with it. Is there a specific amount of hardware that you suggest on running Core? I mean, if it'll run on a Mac, it should be able to run on anything, right?
Yeah, sure. We're not as stringent with system requirements as we are in Studio, because Studio has to account for stuff like Connect, the teleprompter, being able to have the graphics capability and the encode capability to run. I would say if you've got a modern x86 system from the last probably 10, maybe slightly more years, and you're having problems, well, you shouldn't be. Like, I don't see any. It's really hard to know the system requirements as well with something like central control, because the other thing we've done with Core, which kind of is our entry-level product now, is Intro used to have the 5-device limit, so you could kind of predict how far people would push it, but now it's unlimited. So you could probably push it until you run out of resources, but I think you'd be hard pressed to do so on any modern system made, even relatively recently.
Right. Well, I know you have it kind of handy, but can you give us a basic breakdown of what's the difference between, because I know that's in everybody's mind, right? What's the difference between Core and the full version? What are the big differences between them?
So when back last December, when Central Control, the Windows product became Central Control Studio, it was mainly because it kind of ran away from what it was originally supposed to be. We added rundown system, we added a teleprompter, the macro timeline, and then when we did Connect, which lets you essentially send NDI or internal sources to a web browser, it kind of became clear that this was not quite what Central Control initially was. So those are a lot of the features that are in Studio, the top end version. I like to look at it more as, and I think you do as well, Jeff, as like a production toolbox, like something that you probably wouldn't turn up to a production without, because maybe someone's going to say, oh, we need a basic teleprompter now, or we need to flip this NDI source to a browser link so someone can watch it in their browser, or we need a basic, rundown advanced production clock view that we can send over NDI or to a browser, and or any of the other stuff that it did before. But it's more supposed to be a production toolbox. But it also does everything that this does, and everything Central Control was always about: connect anything to pretty much anything. And core, the idea is it's kind of the essence of Central Control, like all the control mapping stuff, protocol conversion, stuff like triggers. So when an event happens on a certain device, you can then do some if else, basic kind of programming to make another device do something else. And that's another thing that Intro didn't have, and that is now in core. So those are kind of the differences. It's more, this is what, if you like, this is what Central Control was supposed to be about. And Studio is where all the crazy ideas go to live, that arguably were never the plan.
Gotcha. That makes it pretty simple. You do have a comparison chart on your website too, which is centralcontrol.io. So that helps a lot too, to be able to diagnose them. But I mean, for the money, for the record, I bought 5 copies of this core because I have plans on deployment and things like that, and it was just a no-brainer for me, because this is, like you said, this is the essence. This is the basics of being able to, I want to be able to control machines. I want to be able to control with computers, or I want to control machines from hardware. And this is exactly what I needed. So we don't have any text questions at the moment, but let's kind of open up the floor for anybody that's got video on. Let me know what is a question you have about Central Control in general, or core itself. If you've got any use case scenarios or anything like that. JJ? He's a lot quieter this time. Usually he's not.
One, two, there you go. How's that? Better?
That's what happens when you hang out 4 different microphones around you.
Actually, I put it away. Have you seen Adam Chow's version of how to control a black magic thing from, what's it called?
Mix effect.
Yeah. So I would ask for more of those controls, because if you've seen it, or if you want someone to buy it for you, I can do that. What was missing from that, as far as it being something that turns an ATEM into something that we can actually use, is one, that it's just for the Macintrash. So living in that Macintrash universe, this I'm expecting, I'm hoping then that those same kinds of controls, creating favorites, having those stored either within the ATEM itself or locally to this, that sounds pretty brilliant, that one could then make those same kind of moves within a Windows environment. And the fact that it was really only built for iPads, but fortunately the version, the whatever that came out when they came out, you could actually load those same types of apps on the M1s.
Oh, Catalyst.
That's the only,
yeah.
That's the only saving grace for having mixed effect function only for iPads. So yeah. I'm excited if you would like to explore some of the other things. And he just used the open API that is Blackmagic, but I'm assuming that's exactly what he used as well. The same feature sets. It's Brilliant.
Pretty much. And I will just go on the record as saying what mix effect does, like the level of depth that application goes into is not something I think we'd ever be at a level at, because his app is specialized for 8M. That's what that's what it was supposed to do. Whereas I guess we're building a more generalist kind of toolkit, kind of like I said earlier. But I think the super source animator, I think, came about because there was a demand for such an application on Windows, and just no one had done it. So I think that was actually the start of when we started to descend into adding stuff that was a bit outside of our remit, but I didn't care enough to stop. But yeah, there will be more of those kind of features coming soon, I'm sure. But I don't think we would ever be at the level that Mix Effect is at in terms of like granular control of the 8M.
All right, Guy, you're up. No softball. I'm just throwing it to Guy.
So is it just one license per machine? So on the new Mac $40 version, and did I miss something that, as far as licensing? Is there a discount beyond, or is it the $40? Or if you buy a 5-pack, is there what do you got going on?
Right. Yes. So the price of the software is $79 for core, which is the same price that the previous entry level intro was at. But you would be completely right in saying that there is a sale on at the moment, and it is 50% off for a limited time only. And I have been asked a lot over the past few days, do I need to buy this? Should I buy this? And the answer might be maybe no, you don't now. But there is, as Jeff knows, he's smiling, there is a scenario where having a bunch of licenses might be advantageous. And I forgot to demo this, so if you don't mind, I'll gladly do it now.
Yep, show us. I know what you're talking about.
Yep. So we've got a new feature coming out soon. It will coincide with the release of Studio 4.5, which is going to have many different modules, including a ROS Carbonite module. Looking at you.
What about the Yamaha module? Come on, bro.
Oh, we need to back on that, don't we? But irrespective of infighting between Jeff and Greg over which module is better, Yamaha or Carbonite, the headline feature is something we're calling Link. And Link essentially allows you to share controllers between instances of central control. And the way it does it is over NDI, which is a really interesting concept because, for one, NDI is amazing at discovery. Like, it'll just show up on the network. And for two, if you've got NDI bridge set up and you're doing cloud production, maybe you plug in your X keys or your MIDI controller into a Macintosh or a Windows machine on your desk, and then all of a sudden you can now get, it's like having a long USB cable up to the cloud, but we've replaced that USB cable with NDI. So I'll show you kind of how this works. So this is actually a beta build of Core, which has this functionality enabled. And in the menu, there's a small checkbox that lets you enable and disable the advertising of all controller modules that you add to NDI. And then you'll probably wonder why I've had this Windows version lurking in the background all the time. This is why. You can add what we call a link receive module to your project. And you'll see here, it's picking up two sources. It's picking up the Stream Deck that I've got plugged into my Mac Mini, and it's picking up the X keys. So I'm going to select the Stream Deck, and then it lets you select a target device, and the target device has to be the same as the source device. And what's interesting about this is that the target device, so I've already added a Stream Deck to my project, but what I can do with this is I can already have all my feedback and my control mapping, all my assignments done, and then essentially turning on Link, is kind of, I'd say, equivalent to adding a as long as you want it USB extension. All the setup's done. We're not putting central control on another machine and remapping it. No, we're just using another central control, say, as an onboarding device to the network. So anyway, I'm going to turn this on, and the eagle eye will notice that that module has turned purple. And what that means is that it is not here. It's remote. It's somewhere else. This module is now under the control of the receiver, which is, so I'll go back to the PTZ. I've got this Stream Deck here plugged into the Mac Mini. But what we're going to do is we're going to use it to control the teleprompter, which is running on the Windows system. This is a central control teleprompter built into the software. And what we're going to do is we're going to map a Stream Deck to some simple control of the teleprompter. So like I said, it's in this project on the Macintosh, or Macintrash if you like. And I'm going to use it to control the teleprompter on Windows. So I'm going to click the controls button like I normally might. And I'm going to select the teleprompter as the receiver. We'll do something really simple. We'll do stop. We'll add the play command, and we will do reset. The other important thing about this is that all the feedback and layering is also done on the machine, on the remote machine, if you like, the machine that is the host that's got the link received. So I think the whole thing with the mapping and the feedback being set by the person who's running Studio Max, I think Studio rather, is important, is because if you're running some kind of distributed cloud production and you're the engineer in charge, well, now you can handle all the assignment of a remote person's controllers, and they don't really have to worry about it. The engineer's taking care of that and setting up their buttons.
I was about to ask. That's exactly what we needed. Yeah.
I suspect that most TDs aren't all that interested in the mechanics of how you're actually doing it, and they just want to say, okay, this button, it does that. Okay, great. I'll program it for you. So we'll do that. We've mapped it, and now what I would like to do is I'm going to just set some simple labels here. I've got it on my Windows machine. I'm just going to type a label here. I believe this was stop, and we'll have the background color as a green. Let's actually do red for that one. And you can actually see on the Stream Deck, it's updating as I go along here. This is going to be play, and we'll make that green for go. I like that. And we'll also set the on state to that as well. And we'll do the same for this one. And then I've got a reset button, which is going to reset the prompter. So now I've got that set up. I can press the button, and as you can see, the teleprompter is scrolling along, and this could be, well, the Stream Deck could be anywhere. If you're using an EI bridge and you've got that set up, it could be anywhere. Ideal for cloud productions as well. And, with the teleprompter example, you could take it even further and then use our web viewer to send the teleprompter to the talent, and then the teleprompter operator somewhere else using Link to control it. And this works for pretty much any controller in the application. So MIDI controllers, X keys, the NewTek panels, and also for like the more generic modules like ArtNet input. So maybe you need a way to reliably send DMX to another location. Well, now we can do it over NDI using Central Control Link.
So you're not going to go to the club anymore. You're just going to sit in your bedroom.
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use, I'm going to set up a PTZ camera at the back with an audio feed. I'll use Central Control Connect so I can, in maybe say 5 frames of latency, monitor it. And then I'm just going to have we actually use MIDI keyboards to control our MA, believe it or not. I'm going to have them set up here, and I'm just going to sit here. I'll have a few drinks, and once I'm done, I'll just walk upstairs to bed.
It seems like an ideal world. I mean, it's just ideal. This is the parts of Core that really excited me as we were talking about this over the last few months and stuff, and the distributed workflow that we're continually working on, developing in, building on. These are the pieces that we needed to make it simpler and being able to manage it all. So after seeing that, anybody have any questions about Link and Central Control Core and what's coming down the pipe?
The obvious question, when?
So yes, sure. Studio 4.5, I hope to have shipping sometime in July, probably closest to the end of July. And that will also coincide with a new release of Core that will have the ability to be like the satellite, the host, if you like. So you could buy a Core license today and then down the road use it as just a simple remote satellite for your bigger central control workflow.
Beautiful. That's
licenses, or can we migrate them?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So Central Control Core is a perpetual license. Studio has two flavors. It has perpetual because we never want to take away that choice. You can either have a perpetual license of it or a subscription license. And you can thankfully now manage your licenses yourself, because I know a pain point for a lot of customers was they'd activate it on some machine. It's production. That machine goes away somewhere. It's in a warehouse. It's in a rack somewhere with no power, and you need to deactivate your key.
Did you write that specifically for me? I just kind of feel like you're talking to me.
I think I wrote it specifically for every single customer of Central Control ever.
Sorry for bothering you.
Same.
No, that is something very much needed. If we've had that conversation before, being able to activate and deactivate, mostly just deactivate. That's the biggest thing. And from what I understand is the way it's not like a full database. So you won't see all your licenses, but you can access them if you need to deactivate. If you know your license, you can do that. Is that right?
If you know your license and the associated email, you can enter it in there and you can deactivate licenses. Yep.
So as long as I know, like the licenses that JJ shares with me, as long as I know his email that he usually uses, which is like 20 or 30 different emails, then I could deactivate his. Okay, got it.
Yeah, you could. And probably the best way to avoid that is just be careful who you're sharing your I mean, I think I always say a license key should be treated similarly to a password in that respect.
For sure. For sure. Definitely. All right. So other question, are we missing anything, Joe? I mean, is not like that's all. I mean, there's a lot to digest.
What about SACN?
Oh.
What about so translating
instead of
DMX,
ARTNet?
Instead of net, SACN. So, yeah.
I don't think we've got SACN modules right now, but I mean they're not internally, they're not too dissimilar, so I don't think that'd be too much work, and it's something that we should do on the input and the output side, because if you think about it that way, you need a quick and easy way to convert SACN to ARTNet or vice versa. We would be able to do that, so I think it's a solid idea. Thank you, JJ.
Yeah. Well, so what I've run into now this year is a couple of TriCaster installs and locations where broadcast traffic was acting infuriating. Thus enabling multicast and SAC and allowing that multicast direct addressing to modules within an environment that'd be super, because it reduces the amount of total load. Because you mentioned, sending broadcast, and one of the limitations that is that ARTNet 4 standard is that /8. So it's taking up 10 of everything, which is insane.
And I will say we do, on the ARTNet side, we do support both unicast and broadcast. So you do at least have a choice in which methodology you use to transmit the ARTNet.
That's good. Yeah, so I know JJ has a lot of that SACN questions and stuff, and you guys should get together to compare notes, because he and I were talking about it back and forth, and it was both of us lost a little hair, just a little bit. So anybody else have any other questions for Joe while we have him here in front of us? Andy, go ahead, fire away.
I got a question, I think, for both of you, which is, you mentioned Yamaha earlier, and I'm wondering, Jeff, about what your workflow is with that or use case. And also, does it, now that Yamaha is slowly moving away from, CLQL to DM, although I know they are very slow to deprecate models, so those things are going to be around for a bunch of years still. But yeah, I mean, can you talk about what your use case is, Jeff, and how that might fit in here?
My use case in my begging of Joe is is completely selfish, and I wanted something that I could use my platform in here that's a flying fader, or I could use my even this Behringer thing that's X-Touch that's sitting on here. I wanted to have the ability to control and adjust a CL or a QL at remote studios. And so currently right now we are using the other Andy stuff. So we're using Remotely Possible to do that. But we had to make a deal on purchasing a QL1 to sit here as a controller. And it's just like, it kills me that we have that much tied up just to be a controller whenever there's plenty of flying faders around. So I know Joe has it on his list, and I backed off of him a little bit. He thinks it'll be done tomorrow, but I gave him to the end of the week. But yeah, it's something we have on our list, and I do agree that DMs are probably, the DM language is different than the QL and CL. They're completely different. TF is closer to what the DMs are using, but DMs are actually different than TF even. So it's kind of tough to create a module that works for all Yamaha at that point.
Be separate modules, wouldn't it? I think that's the only way, really.
Yeah, and the user population of CLs and QLs, it's huge compared to DMs. It's going to take them a while to catch up to that. Those consoles are just going to be around for a long time. So it would be, I get it. It's two different language, two different GUIs and all of that. Yeah.
But that was my need is.
Yeah. And I think you could do some of it with MIDI, but that's cumbersome at best is what it sounds like to get that going. I mean, the whole point of this is that you can program this thing quickly. You're on a job site and we needed to do this. You can do it.
We've got the GUI in front of us, so we can get really deep in everything. As far as like the real intricacies of the mix. If I needed to get into an EQ or something, I'm not really trying to recreate the whole GUI in a hardware, but I want faders that I could feel and grab and touch. That's the main thing. So JJ, what you got?
Timers. Do you have timers built in? So let's say that there's a show that you have, even a teleprompter. Let's say this teleprompter, I wanted to scroll at X speed. Do you have timers built, or timers or triggers built in, so that I could then say, I can say facility automation. So I want these lights at that facility to be on between this and this hour. Again, using DMX SACN communication, and I'm hoping that we're not just talking about core. We're talking about the Windows versions of things.
So in Studio, we do have a feature called Rundown, which allows you to create a time of day based schedule, and you get some production clocks with it, and they can be outputted to a browser or to NDI. And then you can attach triggers to the events that are happening in that rundown to make stuff happen. And there's also a button to pause automation, so you can manually there's a go button as well, so you can manually step through those events. I'd say that's as close as we get to that kind of functionality at the moment. And I will say for now, that is a Central Control Studio Windows only feature.
For sure. Jonas, welcome from Germany. Thanks for being up.
I have two questions. One way to get like the satellite kind of function of core through another protocol that's not NDI, that's a little more remote production without a VPN or NDI bridge friendly, like a normal TCP socket or something like that.
Okay, good question. Right now it's NDI only, but I will say it was designed to be protocol agnostic, so that other protocols could be added in the future, especially for people that really want to manage it themselves and say, okay, we've got Tailscale, or is it WireGuard, or like another VPN system like that on the go. So the answer is not yet, but it's something that is of interest. And I would actually say, while this is still in development, now would be a really good time to kind of get those requests in.
And then the other one is not really with new stuff, but we do a lot of our production not even in like a preview program mode. And one of the things that we keep that we weren't sure is how can you assign feedback to a preview button to also light up as program?
Yep. So the way you can do that live demo is if you don't, I mean, for those that don't know, you can actually assign multiple commands to a single button. So I'm going to add another, do set preview. If I right click these, I can actually say block feedback or block execution, which is important because it essentially, the feedback's automatic. So, you don't get to explicitly say where the feedback's coming from. But the thing about this is it lets you mix and match. This command it's just going to do something. It's going to perform the function. And then I want to take the feedback from something else. So in that scenario, I'd do something like this. I'd say, okay, we're not going to execute that command. We'll use its feedback. And then on this one, we will block the feedback. So now I'm taking the feedback from the top command, and then I am actually performing the action of the second command, set preview on Jeff's ATEM.
Could it also deal with both feedbacks, or is it always one feedback per button?
So there is actually, this is an interesting one, because as per Jeff's request, I believe there was a command added to the ATEM module that would, it would essentially, what it would do, Jonas, was it would use the default color for when it's neither preview or program. It would use the off color for preview, and then it would use the on color for program.
That was for the web panel. Yeah, that's what we asked for.
Yeah. So probably best to send me an email, and I can point you in the direction of that. So yeah, you can kind of do that. There's many ways to mix and match, and there's a similar function I know in the vMix module.
Perfect.
Yeah, that was I had asked you about that because the default was black for the key panel, and I couldn't see the borders. So I wanted the buttons to be a certain color, and if they were program, they would be red. If they were preview, they'd be green. That was my use case.
I think it's kind of one of those for maybe volunteers or like people that are less savvy in television, and they just want a load of buttons to use to essentially punch between sources. But maybe they also need to know, like, if they press a take button, what's up next, and it just reflects that state. I think that's where that's important.
Very true. Very true. And speaking of television, I see Michael's over there right before the show. Welcome, Mr. Lang.
Thanks. Thank you.
He's doing the Brewers tonight, so this is how important it is. He had to see you, Joe. He had to see you.
Thank you, Michael. Always great to see you.
Oh, great to see you too. I'm excited. I'm excited. I had to see the new features. I had to see this, so I'm just waiting for pre-production to start and joining you guys.
So on the bigger questions of pricing right now, so it's going to be $79. It's basically $79. That is the price currently right now for everybody that's a cool friend. It's available for $40.
That's
Buy
right.
as many as you like.
Yep. At present on the store right now is the $40 sale on those licenses. Yep.
Hard to beat that. Can't beat that. Jonas, you got another one. Fire away.
So for Central Control Core, is that web interface compatible with like remote proxy tools like Cloudflare tunnels? So like you could just put it on a device, set up a Cloudflare tunnel so you can remotely configure it, and send it to a producer.
I don't see any reason that you couldn't. It's not something I've tried, but it's just a web page. I'd be surprised if it didn't work. But honestly, not tried it.
And then the other question is, so when you're going to introduce NDI link, will that work with a discovery server, and B, will that work with an NDI router?
Oh, discovery server, yes, absolutely. I don't see any reason that wouldn't work. It's just standard NDI stuff. Router, probably. Again, they're just frames, like video frames, but instead they're control data. I'd be very interested to know the use case.
But I'm scratching my head too. So you want to route it to different locations, like
I'd say like a facility, for instance, too. Like I was saying, like if you have a DocuSign, we're doing automation in their building and allowing certain screens to have certain outputs at certain times, and saying, okay, now we're going to go to production mode. I need all the monitors in the facility to now, instead of using that particular route, I want for the people in the control room, just hit a button, which then would control the router and modify all the routes.
Yeah,
NDI router running on a machine. It makes it really simple to.
And it's similar to that. Like if you have multiple control rooms and you have specific people set, that would be kind of the use case. And it's just an interesting tech question. I don't know if I would ever.
No, it is interesting.
You could use it for a router salvo.
Router.
You could have a series of commands and basically mimic a router salvo with NDI routing, since it doesn't support it natively.
I have a question about Link as well.
Yeah.
Since you're kind of piggybacking over NDI, have you talked to Viz about that at all? Is there any chance of them like blocking it or turning it off randomly one day with an update?
No. Yes, I have spoken. They I think they quite like the idea. But essentially metadata frames, which is what we're using for those interested, is in the NDI spec. It'll always be there, and I certainly don't think VizRT are going to one day decide that what kind of messages you're allowed to send down the metadata channel.
Because that's how their flex control panels right now talk.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all NDI messages. Yeah, you can put any text you want down that channel.
Be shooting themselves in the foot if they did that. The flex they have is the fact that you can talk to, and their SDK program, like hopping in. They're so great at giving access to what the backend of functionality is for NDI.
Nate, have you already made your 12 purchases yet? I didn't remember how many you were going to get.
I only have Studio. I have 2 licenses of that. I lost the one. I just found it by using the manage key function.
Nice. Look at that.
Learned something new.
That's awesome.
I just
sent an
I just
annoying
bought 2.
email yesterday going, I don't know where my keys are. So.
And for anyone that doesn't know, that's at my.centralcontrol.io. I guess I can show you.
Yeah, show us the ins and outs of this.
So here you go. You essentially put in an email, a product key, and then I would show you, but I don't actually know. I think this is one I generated without an email, so I'm not sure. But and when you get in, you can very simply you see where it's activated, and you can click a deactivate button, and the key's free to use again.
Perfect. Exactly what we needed. Simple and easy. Sometimes the easiest things are the hardest things to find, though. So, what about Neo? Where does Neo go? Neo going away?
Neo's not going anywhere. Neo is essentially it's the subscription version of Studio Max. It's identical. So anything you do in Studio Max, you can do in Neo, but it's kind of geared towards people that have all of a sudden have a need to, they're on a production, they need an extra license, maybe it's great for that. Or if you're just not quite sure yet, but you've used a 30-day trial, but you're not sure if you want to fully pull the trigger, Neo just lets you have access to all of that functionality at a subscription price rather than Perpetual.
It's exactly the situation I found myself in a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, exactly.
And what's happening to intro? Is that gone? I mean, what about those of us that have intro keys?
Okay, that's a really good question. Intro is essentially a stop sell. We don't sell it anymore. We will sell it if requested, because there are some modules, believe it or not, in there that Core doesn't have, like mostly stuff that depends on Windows, like so the PowerPoint module, for example. But Intro won't stop getting updates. Intro will get updates as Studio does. It's just not something that we sell anymore.
So you're still working on a ROS module? I just talked to Scarhoy at Infocom. They said they're opening up the API for them to let them do more than ROS talk. Have you had any talks with them about that?
I guess I can probably say that we were the first in that program, and it's under development.
That's awesome, Joe. I mean, honestly, I have, there may be some raw stuff happening in my future, so that's good news to know. But right now, there's Yamaha happening in my future. It's in my present, so we'll start talking about that sooner or later. I know you need to catch up on a lot of things, but yeah, we've got a working system now, and it would just be nice to be able to use simpler stuff to be able to send out to remote operators and such. And it's tough to ship around a whole sound console every single time. So
I have
I've had to
If
get
you
one.
could just virtualize those pesky audio desks. If we just maybe if we really think maybe there's a software for that or something.
yes, and we were already headed there.
I'm
buddy.
sure there's like a module in Sienna processing engine that can do it, but
there is one, but it doesn't have quite the features that I need. But yeah, there are definitely some uses of Llama there for sure in the very near future.
You guys are just trying to AI us out of business. I just
and there speaks the A1.
Actually, by the way,
didn't either.
AES is hosting a conference in San Francisco, or a lecture on AI and audio, which I'm going to try and go to. I mean, I hope it's just tools that help.
Commute is so far for you.
I know it is. I hope that it's just a set of tools that'll help us all out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like that there are reasons to have, whether you call it AI, auto mixing, whatever that's out there. There are reasons to have it. It helps you on really big events, especially too. Yeah. And that's really, it's just the right tool for the right job at the time. Well, I want to thank Joe again. Appreciate you coming in and showing us everything about Core and all the new feature sets that are coming along the lines of Core, and other new things like Link that's going to be coming out with the full central control Max and everything studio. So thank you, Joe. Appreciate you staying up late with us and hanging out. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And now that you understand, we're going to have a Discord about Discord coming up, so that Joe can understand more about Discord, because he's not there enough. I just want you to know, Discord is the new Facebook. Okay, it's where all the cool people hang out.
don't say that.
It's pretty close. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. And again, next week we're going to be back again, and I have some other things planned, but I'm not going to release them just yet. I don't have any new software to show yet that Joe has, so he made sense to have in this week, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody's face again. Thanks for all being part of it and showing up, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on What Makes It Tick.